Good afternoon and welcome to Signs of Destiny 2004. I'm your host, Dr. Chet Snow, and this afternoon, our Sunday afternoon program begins with a truly remarkable person from England who actually set out to be a surveyor and work in that area, and then got into leather work and actually making shoes. And it was only after he had been doing this that he found that this was a tradition that had gone back in his family for several generations that he had not known about. So that's a very interesting story. And then from there, he got involved way back early, really before the Mayan calendar books came out, before Jose Arguelles was doing a lot of things in public. In the early 80s, the concept of 2012 began to interest him, and he has been studying then for really over 20 years what that date might mean, what it might portend. He has set up a website called diagnosis2012.co.uk, which is their way of putting internet sites in England. And he is working on a book, Beyond 2012, Catastrophe or Ecstasy, and I think papers have been put on your chair about that, and hopefully it will be out next year. So he got interested in crop circles and in the sacred geometry of crop circles really quite accidentally, having seen an advertisement in the local paper. He's from southern England, the Sussex area, and Andy Thomas, who was our speaker last year, was forming a group there to research the local circles, which were really starting to come up in the 90s. In the southern part of England, outside of Wiltshire, that was the next big grouping of circles, and we still have quite a few there. So he went to that meeting, and Andy has been helping him and has certainly been very supportive of the 2012 research as well. So this afternoon, Geoff Stray is going to tell us all about Beyond 2012. What are we to expect? Geoff.
Thank you very much, Chet, and it's a great honor to be here. Thanks very much for inviting me. The Chinese people had a game which in the UK we call snakes and ladders, but I believe you know it as chutes and ladders over here. Well, the second half of the talk will be going into that a little more, and you'll see the relevance of this picture on the screen. The first half of the talk will be following the history of the 2012 phenomenon, although in a somewhat abridged form due to the time constraints. A bit more volume on the... Do it a bit more volume on the sound. Hang on, let's go back again. Any more sound volume available? Yeah, it's just this is the logo for the website. And that's the URL at the top there. If you haven't been there, make a note, because it's been online for 4 years, and it is the web's most comprehensive database on the year 2012. And we've been collecting information and input from people all over the world to try and explain what 2012 is all about by contributing their visions, prophecies, theories. And they're all compiled on the site without any particular agenda or angle coming from me. It's really just to try and make an overview of the whole thing and collect all the information into one place. That's the sound that goes with the image. Now, I've had a little bit of feedback from a few people saying that they thought the image and the sound was satanic. Hopefully, by the end of the talk, you'll see the relevance of the image and how it relates to the whole overview of the concept. It all starts with the Olmecs. As John mentioned the other night, archaeologists are, they basically say either sometime between 1800 BC and 1500 BC, the Olmecs were in the town of Itzapa. And by 700 BC, they had come up with the Tzolk'in, the 260-day sacred calendar, which is composed of these 20 day signs combined with 13 numbers. Dot is 1, then it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, starts again at 1. So it takes 260 days to get all the combinations of number and day sign. The surviving Maya today that live in the highlands of Guatemala, they say that the meaning of this is a representation of human gestation, the 9 months that we're in the womb, so that the day that you're born on carries a certain atmospheric signature that is a little bit comparable to Western astrology. It sets your character. The same structure can be used to map the long count calendar, which, well, John said I've got 250 BC here. Some people say 1st century BC, some say a little bit before that, but basically by the 1st century BC, the Olmecs had come up with the long count calendar as well, and instead of 260 days, it's 260 kutuns, and a kutun is a period of about 20 years. So you can map out the whole of the long count, the 13 Bacton cycle, which started in 3114 BC and terminates in 2012. It can all be mapped out onto a Zolkin structure. And in that way, you can map out the whole of human history so that each of these columns is one Bacton, and there's 13 of those, starting with 0 up to 12. So we're in the last Bacton at the moment, which is this column. Each of these is a Kutun, and each Kutun can be given a Gregorian date that correlates with it, so that the final Kutun started in April 1993 and terminates 21st of December 2012. The stela or stele, depending how you pronounce it, on the left here is at Quirigua, and it shows, it's not very clear here, this is actually a drawing of what can be seen on the actual stele. It shows the creation date, which corresponds to the 11th of August 3114 BC, which that's actually in the Gregorian historical calendar. If you see 3113 BC, that's in the astronomical Gregorian calendar, because the astronomers have taken out, they've added in a year 0 to make computations easier between BC dates and AD dates. So it's actually the same thing. 3114 BC is currently the more popular way of talking about it. So the numbers we were talking about just now are seen vertically here. You've got 2 bars and 3 dots, 13, that's 13 Bactons. Then you've got a 0, 0, 0, 0 for Ahau, which is the Zolkin date, and this one is 8 Kumku, which is the date in the Harb calendar, which is a 365-day calendar. If there was to be found a stele showing the end date of the calendar in 2012, this is what it would look like. 13, 0, 0, 0, 0, 4 Ahau, 3 Kankin. Different Harb dates, but the rest of all of these glyphs are the same as the original one at Quirigua. This glyph here is Night Lord 9. That's, there's 9 possible Night Lords that can cover any day. But the Maya described it as a creation point. So we had a creation point here, this also being a creation point. It may indicate that there's something beyond the second creation point, and it's not just a termination point. Thanks very much to John for the diagram, by the way. This is the stele that he showed you yesterday, Stela 25 from Itzapa, where, for anybody that didn't see John's talk, we have the story of the Popol Vuh creation story, which was only written down in post-conquest times, is actually depicted in this stela, which goes back well beyond BC dates. So we have one Hunahpu, one of the hero twins, shaking the tree to make the god Seven Makor fall off his perch. And 7 Macaw, according to the Maya that are still around today, represents the constellation of the Great Bear or the Big Dipper. And this crocodile tree represents the Milky Way. And just note this snake that is coiled around this, which is the polar axis of the Earth, and also around the Milky Way. Here you can see what it refers to and why the crocodile tree is the Milky Way. The dark rift here is the crocodile's mouth, very close to galactic center. About 3,000 years ago, the pole of the Earth, which is currently pointing over here, 23.5 degrees off the vertical, due to precession, 3,000 years ago it was here, and it has wandered in the meantime to here, where it is today at the star Polaris. So here you can see the 7 Macaw, there's the tail feathers, and how that is represented as the constellation of the Big Dipper. So, as John's discovered, the whole of the long count calendar is about the cycle of the precession of the equinoxes, although the Maya were measuring it from the solstices. Another stellar from Ixapa, and thanks again to John for this diagram. This is, instead of the crocodile's mouth, we have the jaguar toad with first father Wanhunapu in the mouth. The solar deity being reborn in the mouth of the jaguar toad is the event that John has decoded as being the solstice sun lining up with the galactic equator. And just note how similar an image it is to our own expectations of the return of a solar deity who was crucified. Because the day of Jesus, of course, is Sunday. In the sky, again, thanks to John for the illustrations, 8,000 years ago, the sun was there on winter solstice sunrise. 4,000 years ago it was there, and today it's here right along the galactic equator. And from looking towards the horizon, the same thing is what you see in the sky is 6,000 BC, which is 8,000 years ago, up there, getting closer and closer until today the rising solstice sun converges right with the dark rift, or the mouth of the crocodile, or the mouth of the jaguar toad. This is another monument at Ixapa, showing this time the deity in the mouth of a serpent. This is a depiction of what you can see here. It's my friend Tanya standing in front. The nostrils and the open mouth, and there's the bottom of the mouth down here, and there's the god within the mouth. Again, and a variation on the same theme. This object here is a kind of an unknown. It's not lens flare. We asked a professional photographer, and he didn't know what it was. As John also mentioned, oh, by the way, yes, the snake is a symbol of rebirth because it sheds its skin. To the Aztecs, they kind of, according to the archaeologist Laurette Sejourné, the Aztecs, when they moved into northern Mexico, they misinterpreted the knowledge of the people that were already there, the Toltecs, and they took this concept of rebirth and the snake connection too literally, so that they ended up skinning their prisoners and then walking around in the prisoners' skins. But the whole thing was supposed to be taken metaphorically as a concept showing the rebirth principle. Also, as John mentioned, the ball game played all over North America, and even in Hopi land. We just went up there a couple of days ago, Alan Brown and myself, and saw a ball court, not exactly the same, but they think it's definitely connected with the Mesoamerican ball game. And as John has decoded, the meaning behind the ball game is when the ball goes into the goal ring, the game is over. And that whole end of game concept applies to the time that we're living in now. So the question is it game over, or is it the start of a new round, or perhaps moving up to the next level of the game? And another amazing discovery by John here. We're up to the 8th century AD now, when the Toltecs from northern Mexico moved down into the Yucatan, and they combined their cosmology with that of the Maya who were already living in the Yucatan. And the result was this pyramid of Kukulkan. And Kukulkan is the Maya name for Quetzalcoatl, the Aztec serpent god, the feathered serpent, who I've actually got on my shirt here. Every spring equinox, there's a shadow play on the pyramid, and there are thousands of people that visit it every year now to witness it. And there's a stone snake's head at the bottom to help reinforce the impression. But as the equinox sun moves across the sky, it appears that there is a snake slithering down the pyramid. This design is based on the Crotalus rattlesnake, which has a little symbol just near the tail here, which is exactly the same as the Maya symbol for the sun. And also in the Yucatec Maya language, their word for the rattle is Zab, which is the same as their word for the Pleiades. So John worked out that basically this thing is a stone alarm clock with its alarm set for the 21st century and right now, because what it's measuring is the slow approach of the Pleiades to the zenith sun, which happens exactly 60 days after the spring equinox every year. So they were watching to see, as the Pleiades got closer and closer to the zenith sun, when they coincided with it, that would be the end of the 13 Baxter cycle. That, the time in which that happens is a 72-year time window between 1976 and 2048, and right in the center of that time window is 2012. And actually happens on the day Ten Chik Chan, which means snake day. So going on to try and find more modern or more recent sources for this 2012 knowledge, we find that there's the last of the Seneca medicine men, Moses Shongo. He had a vision sometime before 1925, which he said that there would be a 25-year period of purification leading up to the year 2012. And during that time, he said, Earth will purge itself. Now, his granddaughter is Twyla Nitsch, who you can see here, as she was a few years ago and as she is today. And she's been designated as the carrier of the sacred teachings, including this prophecy. Reuben Silverbird, a Native American on the left, he was born blind. At the age of 5, he regained his sight, but during those 5 years, he had learned to travel out of his body. And by the time he was 7 years old, he had an out-of-body experience in which he experienced a vision of his own death and rebirth. And he was given the year 2012 as the year that would occur. He said that he was brought back to life in 2012 by what he called a spiritual, almost holy stranger. And again, this vision happened sometime before 1960. I haven't been able to work out exactly when, because I don't know exactly how old he is. But going on to 1975 on the right here, Daniel Brinkley. In 1975, he was talking on the telephone and during a thunderstorm, and a lightning bolt hit the telephone line and he was killed, stone dead. But it was actually only dead for 28 minutes. It was, at that time, the longest known near-death experience. There has been a longer one more recently. But during that 28 minutes, he said he came out of his body, went down a tunnel into a bright light, and was confronted by a bright silver being. He then relived all the memories of his life as people often report in near-death experiences, and he judged himself because he'd been in the Marines and had a lot of guilt to cope with about killing and his general lifestyle. And having gone through that process, he was then taken to a crystal city where he met 12 beings who were surrounding a 13th being, and he said they were somehow connected with the 12 signs of the zodiac. He was then shown a miniature television set on which 300 scenes from the future were shown to him, and that future was between 1975 and 2012. By the time of 2002, 117, well, rather, of those 300 scenes, 117 of them were said to have been prophecies of major events. By the time of 2002, over 100 of those 117 events had occurred, leaving just 17 to come to pass between then and 2012. So his prophecy that he brought back with him when he woke up in the morgue on a tray with a death certificate having been issued, he said that there would be the return of an energy system to this area of the galaxy in the year 2012, and with it would come earth changes, a magnetic pole shift, and a spiritual opportunity for mankind. Now, the description that he gave of the 12 beings surrounding a 13th is very reminiscent of the round table. This is King Arthur and the round table with the segments for the 12 knights of the round table. So you've got the 12 knights and King Arthur, which is itself reminiscent of the signs of the zodiac. Anybody who's familiar with Dan Brown's recent book, what's it called? The Da Vinci Code, might recognise that this 5-petaled rose is connected with the pentagram that represents Venus. And the reason that that's associated with Venus is because every 584 days, as our own the orbit of Earth coincides with that of Venus, it appears that Venus does a retrograde loop in the sky. That's what it's called. But what happens is that as we come alongside Venus, it seems to slow down in the sky, come to a stop, appears to go backwards, then it stops again and continues forward. It's called a retrograde loop or an inferior conjunction of Venus. That happens every 584 days, but on a different place on the horizon. So after 5 of those 584-day periods, it comes back to the beginning again, or very close to it, about 2.4 degrees away from its original position, and forms a pentagram. Now, so there we have this suggestion of the sun. The sun that's in the center here is suggested by the stamens in the center of the rose, but there's also another rose within the outer rose, so you've got a pentagram within a pentagram. Hold that image for later. I was very privileged this year to spend a couple of days with this man, Juan Núñez del Prado, who is an initiated Paco or Andean priest. He spent a large part of his life in Cuzco, where he was born, up in the Andes, and he was initiated into the Quero priesthood, and that's quite a small tribe who live right up in the mountains. And his teachers were the last 2 of the great Quero Pacos. And by 1988, they were both dead, unfortunately. But sometime before that, it was actually sometime before 1987, is all I've managed to work out, he was given a formula for the Pachakuti, which someone mentioned during their talk. And it's translated as, one of the translations of the word is a turning over of space-time. And the formula that he was given was that the actual Pachakuti itself would only last for 3 years. That would be followed by 7 years of preparation, and then after that would be a 12-year period of manifestation. Then on the 1st of January 1990, a delegation of Pacos came to his front door and said that they had read the signs and decreed that the Pachakuti would start on the 1st of August that year, 1990. And so, with a little arithmetic, Juan worked out that that meant that the 3-year Pachakuti would terminate in 1993. The 7-year period of preparation would then be up in 2000, and the 12-year period of manifestation would end on the 1st of August 2012. At that time, it would be the start of a golden age that they called Taripe Pacha, and that means the golden age of meeting ourselves again. What they say that means, the Pacos, is that this is the time when the upper world and the lower world converge on the world in which we live. So you've got the 3 worlds converging into one world. And at this time, I asked him about this prophecy, and he assured me that he had, by the time of 1990, he hadn't even been out of Cuzco in his whole life, and he knew nothing whatsoever about the Maya or any other information to do with the year 2012. So this is an independent source. So this is going on to 1995. 1987, of course, in between, just after Juan was told about the Pachakuti formula, Jose Arguelles brought out the Mayan factor, which opened up this whole concept of 2012 to a worldwide audience. By the time we got to 1995, a book came out in the UK by Adrian Gilbert and Maurice Cottrell called The Mayan Prophecies. And this was serialised in a national newspaper called the Daily Mail. And so it got a very wide coverage in the UK. The theme of the book was that Cottrell and Gilbert had discovered, by studying the Dresden Codex, which is one of the 4 surviving bark books of the Maya, the rest had all been destroyed by the Spanish. By studying this ancient bark book, they claimed that they had discovered that the Maya calendrical systems were encoding a long solar cycle, and that in 2012 there would be a flip of the warped neutral sheet of the sun, leading to floods, earthquakes, and general catastrophe all across the world. It's caused a little bit of panic, and I started looking at the book, trying to work out how exactly they got this out of the Dresden Codex information. And I read it through twice, and I was reading it through the 3rd time, scratching my head, thinking either there's something wrong with me or there's something wrong with them. Then I came across John Major Jenkins's interview with Adrian Gilbert, and was relieved to find that under questioning, Adrian Gilbert's answers were not very satisfactory. In fact, the explanation for the disappearance of the Maya was by the graph which they came up with from working out these figures from the Dresden Codex. It actually correlated to the time when the Maya were at their height rather than when they disappeared. It wasn't 600 AD, they didn't disappear till between 800 and 900. And when I say disappear, they weren't beamed up by aliens. It was known now that there was a drought, and that's why these cities were abandoned. Another thing I found is that they worked this out by looking at the sun has 2 polar magnetic fields and 4 equatorial magnetic fields. And the equatorial magnetic fields are pulled round faster because the Mercury, being so close to the sun, drags the polar fields round faster than the equatorial fields rotate faster than the polar fields. That ties up all the magnetic field lines and results in them bursting out on the surface of the sun every 11 to 11.5 years. That's the familiar sunspot cycle. But they had worked out further that this massive megacycle would last for about every 18,000 years. We'd have this massive reversal of the sun's magnetic field, which would cause these catastrophes. However, when I checked their figures, I found that by a massive internet search, The nearest I got to their figures were 35 for the polar and 25.38 for the equatorial. When you multiply that through the whole of their workings out, it comes out as a 1,000-year error. So their 87-day bit turns into a 92.3-day cycle. Anyway, it still scared the hell out of this guy. This is a Belgian called Patrick Gerrel and his associate, who is an astronomer called Gino Ratinks. Patrick Gerrel had several very expensive life insurance policies, and they all terminated somewhere around 2014. So when he read the Māori Prophecies, he realised he wouldn't be living long enough to get the money. So he chucked all the life insurance policies back and used the money to start his own research into trying to find out why and how and whether or not there was any messages to help us deal with the coming catastrophe. So what they did was they got hold of quite a rare translation of the Egyptian Book of the Dead by a Frenchman called Albert Slosman. This says that the Atlantean cataclysm happened in the year 9792 BC, and that the warning for this cataclysm was what we talked about earlier, a retrograde loop of the planet Venus, which occurred over the top of the Orion constellation in the year 9792 BC. They said that they'd found that there was another similar loop over Orion in the year 2012, so that this must be a signal that in 2012 we were going to have another Atlantean-style cataclysm. When they finally got it sorted, they realised that the 2012 loop is not exactly the same shape and it's not in exactly the same place, but it seemed to be near enough to satisfy them that it was still the sign they were looking for. The other part of their theory was that they thought that the Atlanteans had moved to Egypt, and they constructed this, this thing called the Labyrinth, which several Greek philosophers have mentioned, and that this is a massive astronomical building with thousands of rooms, and was supposedly encoding all the information that we would need in order to know how to handle this coming cataclysm. They figured that you've heard of the three belt stars of Orion being connected with the three pyramids of Giza, as found out by Robert Bauval. Well, they said that if you line up the Orion constellation such that the three belt stars overlay the Giza pyramids, then if you look at there's actually a constellation called the Labyrinth in the sky, and they figured that if those belt stars overlay there, you line Orion up, then the celestial labyrinth would overlay the terrestrial labyrinth, and then there they would find the lost hall of records and the lost labyrinth building and all the information we needed. Where they said that was 15 miles down this direction at Hawara. And when I checked it out, the celestial labyrinth is actually just up here. So they were completely wrong on that. The other thing I checked out was to do with these retrograde loops. The 2012 loop is in red here. The position of the 9792 BC loop was over here, somewhere near where 1940 or 1948 loops happened, because they forgot to mention that every 8 years the loops move across the sky, so that there's all these loops to choose from if you're looking for a match. So the best match to their 9792 BC position would have already happened about 60 years ago. And there was no cataclysm, so I thought, that's great, the world's not going to end, and I'll let them know. They were not very happy when I let them know, and say no more. Another source of information on 2012 is the Maoris. The Maoris have a creation myth in which they say that the sky god Rangi and the earth god Papa were once in a close embrace, and they had some children, the wind god, the sea god, and the war god. The war god's name was Tain, by the way. And the children wanted their own space, so they pushed Rangi and Papa, their parents, apart, giving themselves some space. Now, the creation myth continues that one day when the children of Tain, that is mankind, no children of the war god, when they are too distracted, Rangi and Papa will come back together again, causing destruction. Now, the term that they've got for this is Kahinga Tiarai. And they've said recently that the year that this will occur is the year 2012. That term, Kahinga Tiarai, means the curtain will fall. So it sounds like the last act of a play when the curtain falls and it's all over. However, a young Maori got to interview some of these elders, and it transpired that the original words have actually evolved in their meaning. The original meaning of the word hinga is to dissolve or fade, and the original meaning of the word arai is a veil or separator, so that the correct translation for what will happen in 2012 is the veil will dissolve. The Hopis. We saw one of these just this week, actually. This is a kiva, where the Hopis do their ceremonial. And note the ladder going up. This is a picture of them doing one of the ceremonies. They say that we're in the fourth world, approaching the fifth world. And there are several prophecies associated with that transition. Most of those have now come to pass, apart from the last one, which is to do with when the blue star Kachina comes to dance in the plaza. We actually had a word with them about this prophecy when we were up there, and one woman had heard of it and had asked her father, but he said he'd never heard of it, and the other woman said she had heard of it. Anyway, this symbol here, the labyrinth, is exactly the same as the Cretan labyrinth, but it also is the symbol which the Hopi Indians use to describe the transition from one world to the next, and they call it an emergence, the transition from the fourth to the fifth world, or from the previous third world to this fourth world. In the kiva, there's a little hole in the bottom there called a sipapu, and that represents the point where they came up from the third world to the fourth world. So every November, they have a ceremony in these kivas called Wuwuchim, and it's a replay of what happened when they came up from the third world into the fourth world, and sort of practice run for what will happen when they go from the fourth to the fifth world. It includes what they've called a new fire ceremony, which similar to which the Aztecs had every 52 years, but they have this every year in November. But like the Aztec ceremony, it culminates at midnight with the Pleiades overhead, showing that there is a connection to the whole of this concept of using the Pleiades to measure precession. At the crux, at the final point of this ceremony, a white-robed figure comes down the ladder, and he's wearing a star on his head and says, "I am the beginning and the end." Then everybody tears all their clothes off and the stars on their heads, and they all try and rush up the ladder before the world ends. But that's before the world as in this era, and the new one begins. Yes, note the crop formation that we've had, very similar to the labyrinth symbol. At Palenque in Chiapas, there is this mural called the Mural of the Four Suns, and seems to have a sort of skeletal face with four tassel-like things around his neck. Very similar to this mural at Tanina in Guatemala. I don't know, it's somewhere, I can't remember if it's Guatemala or Mexico now. That's Chiapas as well, right. But here you can see I've had to put about 8 or 10 pictures together to make this because it's such a massive mural. there are 3 surviving of these upside down heads of the deity representing the eras. Very similar to these here. So the 4th one was up here and is now crumbled away. But it's got a head with a hair hanging down, so it's the same symbol. But note that this is connected to this large central head, and here you have a skull in the center as a sort of possible controlling 5th era. And there are various Maya myths talking about 4 eras and some talking about 5 eras. Well, in the Aztec version depicted on the Sunstone, there are 5 eras depicted. You've got the central era here, in which we see the sun god Tonatiuh, who is the governor of the current and 5th era. Previous eras are wind, rain, jaguar, and flood. They're apparently all connected with the catastrophes which accompanied the ends of those eras. So there'll be hurricanes, eclipses, rain of hot lava, and flooding. But then the Aztecs were living in a very earthquake-prone zone and right in the middle of a whole bunch of volcanoes. So it's quite a dangerous place to live anyway. But note on here, these little things around here are called eagle feathers. If you actually look underneath, I've actually made a reconstruction of this with all the bits missing, and there is 104 of these eagle feathers. That represents the 104 harbs in what they call a Venus round, because every 52 years is a calendar round, which is when the 365-day calendar and the Tzolk'in, the 260-day calendar, combine. So that every day over your 260 days has a different name under the Tzolk'in. Every day has a different name under the 365-day harb, but only every 52 years do that combination recombine. So every 52 harbs of 365 days each. Well, 2 of those is a Venus round of 104 harbs, and there it is depicted on the calendar. I'll tell you in a minute how it connects to Venus, but for the moment, I made an animation of this because I've noticed that there's several things on this that imply that it could have been based on an earlier, although archaeologists would have a fit if I was to lay this on them, but the Aztecs are not supposed to know anything about the long count calendar. But I've looking at this, these are the day signs around here, by the way. I'll show you a minute. These ones, exactly the same as the Mayan day signs, but they are the Aztec versions. They're upside down at the bottom, right way up at the top, as if they're supposed to be rotated. There's several bits on here where overlaid parts can be seen peeking out from underneath, as if the whole thing is designed on an original which had moving parts. So I've done an animation to show you how this might possibly have worked with all the components. So this is the hard copy version. But first of all, just a quick one to show you how the bits combine with each other. Just starting off, it's a bit quick at first there. It was just saying that the 260-day calendar and the long count are based on the same 260 unit design, which is individual gestation and planetary gestation. So they're the 20-day signs: alligator, wind, house, lizard, snake, death, deer, rabbit, water, dog, monkey, grass, reed. You can see actually there how the dog's head is upside down there. And the 13 numbers that you would need in order to track the Tzolk'in on it can be found on this, around the edge here is 2 snakes. The rattles are up here and the heads are down here with gods in their mouths. There's your 13 numbers repeated, and the 2 pointers to point them out. To find the long count, we need to find 20 days, 18 weanals, which is a 20-day period, 20 tuns, 20 katuns, 13 back tuns. This is your 20 positions. There's your Tun counter for your 360-day year, your Katun counter for your 20-year period, and it's a bit too fast this, sorry about that. That was the 13 Bactans. But the only thing missing is the 18 Weanals. Now you watch carefully and you can see where they're hidden. The tongue of Tanatu here would be the pointer that would point as the dial revolves. So this is what it would look like on the first day of the long count. Zolkin for a how was there, 4 was there. Then you've got 0, 0, 0, that's 0 there, and 0 position there as well. So now just to show you how that would have worked in practice, if we were to look at this speeded up so that you get 1 day passing every second and then speeding up to 1 Weanal or 20-day period per second, and then after that 1 360-day or Tun per second, and then 1 Katun per second, which is 20 years, and then 400 years per second of 1 Bactun. This is what it would look like. It's a massive file, this. It's a bit of a strain for the poor thing. More volume. More. Yeah. Now the Zolkin going around there and the long count being counted off there. Now the Weanals, that's 1 20-day period per second. Tun per second, 360 days. One Katun per second, that's 20 years per second. Thank you. I brought my own applause just in case. Now, to get on to crop formations and their relevance to this whole Mayan calendar and 2012. This crop formation appeared in 1995, and it was called the Missing Earth Formation because it seems to represent an asteroid belt and the orbits of Mars, Earth, Venus, Mercury, and the Sun. However, Earth seemed to be missing from its orbit. That's why they called it Earth is Missing Formation. On the day that it appeared, a researcher called Jaz Rasul said that looking from below the solar system, the planets were in that position with the Sun at the center, Mercury over here, and Venus up there, and Mars there. The same angles. However, the standard astronomical way of looking at the solar system is from above. And a researcher called Jack Sullivan, who's an amateur astronomer, he said that on the 16th of January 1998, this configuration appeared with, in exactly the same way, but looking from above the solar system. And again, on the 4th of June this year, 4 days before the Venus transit, we had exactly the same configuration again, but in both cases, the Earth, which is missing off there, is located in the same position, which is right next to Venus, which means that it was in the middle of a retrograde loop, or the inferior conjunction of Earth and Venus. And that's when the Venus transit occurs, during the retrograde loop. The Venus transit came on the 8th of June this year. So this seems to be saying something about Venus and something about the retrograde loop of Venus. And as a sort of an extra, there are 65 of these asteroid rocks around here. And 65 is a Venus number because there are 65 of the 584-day cycles in the 104 Hab Venus round, which we showed you on the Sunstone. This, as we've seen, the 5 retrograde loops of Venus that occur over exactly 8 Habs form a pentagram with their positions on the horizon. This crop formation has 13 of these scale-like things between each of the points, and of course 5 lots of those adds up to 65. So you've got Venus depicted in the pentagram itself and in the number 65, and again in the center with these in a fractal way are like miniature versions of the same thing. So you've got 65 within 65. This shows how Venus goes through and ends up slightly away from where it started. But remember when I showed you the picture of the round table with one rose within a smaller rose, representing a pentagram within a smaller pentagram? You could have the same thing here, and it could be possible that if the central one represented the movement of Venus and the Venus round, which is the 65 lots of the 584 days making the 104-year Venus round, this would then represent a larger cycle, and that could be the 65 Bactons, which make up the 5 eras of the precessional cycle, because in the 13 Bacton cycle, if that was one of the eras, which we saw on the Sunstone and at Turnina, then 5 of those eras would total 65 Bactons, which is 26,000 tuns, and one cycle of the precession. So this could be the 26,000-year precessional cycle connected up with the Venus cycle, both very much looked at by the Maya. A very interesting little side effect of looking at this is the Venus transit this year was on in the Quiche Maya count, which is the unbroken count which they're still using today. It's the day 6 Ik, and because these are exactly 8 Habs apart, it was on the day 5 Sots, so that the next one in 2012, on the 6th of June 2012, will also be on the day 5 Sots, but more amazing, they're both on Ik days, and Ik is the day of Ehekatl, which you can see here, and is a form of Quetzalcoatl, and Quetzalcoatl is associated with Venus because in the myth, he became Venus. This is the Mayan version of Ik. So, pretty amazing that the Venus transit this year and in 2012 both happen on Quetzalcoatl's day, the day of Venus. One Venus pentagram is 8 Habs, which is 146 Wenals. One Venus round is 146 Zolkins, 104 Habs, which is 2 calendar rounds, 65 Venus cycles. It's all a bit of a strain on the brain, this, but it's quite amazing. I don't know why this 146 keeps coming up. One Mars round is 3 Venus rounds, and it's equivalent to 146 Mars cycles, where a Mars cycle is 780 days. That is the period between 2 Mars loops. Now that has already appeared in the fields at Etchelhampton, Wiltshire, 1997. We had a 780 unit grid, and at the time that was 30 by 26. Michael Glickman, the crop circle researcher and a legendary geometer, he said he thought this was about 2012 because that's the exact number of weeks, 780 weeks between the time it appeared and the same time in the year 2012. Because 15 years away, and it was 30 units down one way and 26 the other way. So that's 30 years, right, 30 lots of 26 weeks is 15 years, basically. So it's the exact number of weeks between when it appeared and 2012. I think this is the most amazing crop formation that we've had associated with the Maya calendar, because April 2004, it actually ghosted was the second one to be reported this year. But last year, July 2003, Huish in Wiltshire, this 13-pointed star appeared. And it's a dead copy of a diagram from Jose Arguelles' Mayan factor, which I've just shaded in for emphasis here. And that diagram was to describe the 13-Baxton cycle itself. So here it is in the fields 2 years running. Oh, another thing about that, which I forgot to mention about the Venus transits, is there was a Venus transit in 1518 and another one in 1526. And between those Venus transits is when Cortez invaded the Aztecs, and they mistook him for their returning god Quetzalcoatl, the god of Venus. So it's like there was an expectation of the return of Quetzalcoatl between the Venus transits at that time, because they got it wrong and he killed them all. But we mustn't make the same mistake. At Newgrange in Ireland, there is a light box. It's a kind of massive passage grave. There's a light box over the door, and the whole thing is designed so that at winter solstice every year, the sun shines down the passage and illuminates the glyphs down the passageway, and especially down the light box right into the central chamber, where it illuminates a triple spiral. And there's only 2 triple spirals on the whole site. One you can see here on the doorway, and there's one in the central chamber. When it was built on winter solstice, the solstice sun illuminated the triple spiral at the center chamber. But today, because of the slight movement of the sun, it's moved across onto the floor. But there's 2 Masonic writers, Knight and Lomas, have recently looked at this, and they've said that this is the Neolithic sign for 1 year, this cross sign, because like we get a similar thing at Stonehenge, where you've got the rectangle at Stonehenge. It's sort of where if you join up the solstice, winter solstice sunrise, winter solstice sunset, summer solstice sunrise, summer solstice sunset, you will get this kind of cross shape. So to the Neolithic people, that represents 1 year. So 8 crosses represents 8 years. So this is related to the movement of Venus, because every 8 years it comes back to where it started again. And sure enough, they found that every 8 years, just before the sun comes up, Venus gives a very soft glow of illumination into the chamber and actually illuminates the triple spiral. This is a Toltec pendant which shows Venus and some sort of rays coming out of its mouth. And it's been discovered that during retrograde loops, there are an increase in flu outbreaks and a lot of microbe attacks on photographs, showing that there maybe is some sort of radiation associated with the movement of Venus. As to what the triple spiral means, we've had some in the fields. This one was this year. If you put a lens over a plank of wood at midday every day, and then join up the dots, you'll find that there's a tight spiral around the solstices and a loose loop over the equinoxes. That means that a spiral represents 1/4 of a year. 3 spirals therefore represent 3/4 of the year, or 9 months, or 1 gestation period. So it could be that this is the light coming in through the light box, cross-section of the tomb, and so every 8 years, this thing is lit up by Venus and is connected with gestation. So you've got the winter solstice connection and the Venus connection, which may be a connection to the Maya concept of the end of a long cycle. That is the Crotalus rattlesnake, which we mentioned, and you can see that the pattern on the skin is reminiscent of the Mexican pyramids. And you can't see the Ahau symbol, but there's the rattle there. This is Quetzalcoatl in the mouth of the snake. This is a crop formation in which we had the Ouroboros, which represents cycles of time, apparently surrounding the Earth and the Moon. Snake is a symbol of Venus, rebirth, knowledge, cycles, eternity, and also the ecliptic, which is the passage of the sun and the planets across the sky. Snakes also are connected with Earth energy. We have St. Michael and St. George who killed the dragon, and according to Mary Scott, who's researched into Kundalini energy, there's a lot of Kundalini qualities which are apparent in stories from dowsers about Earth energy. So she thinks that Kundalini is a form of Shakti, or the mother energy of the Earth. So the Kundalini energy comes up from below, while Shakti, the male energy, comes down from above. And here you can see this is the 7 chakras, and Kundalini is usually said to be sleeping in the base chakra called the Muladhara at the base of the spine, and it's said to be coiled in 3.5 loops. You can see this is the symbol for that chakra, and that's an enlargement. You can see the snake is actually coiled in 3.5 loops around the Shakti line of force, which comes down from above. 3.5 is a number that crops up in dowsing a lot, is the number, it's a multiple of 3.5 in the spirals which they detect in aquastats, what do you call them, blind springs, are usually a multiple of 3.5 in spirals. So going on with the ladder side of things. Ladders have been said to represent the ascent of man from earth into heaven, and the demons, of course, here are trying to pull people off. It's also how you connect between the 7 realms, or the 7 planes of existence, each associated with the 7 planets or the 7 chakras, either connected by a ladder or by a tree, which is the world tree, the Earth's polar axis. So, yeah, going back to the last one again, just go. This concept of Shakti coming down from above and Kundalini coming up from below could represent a spiritual wedding. Because in the concepts of Kundalini, you're supposed to raise the Kundalini energy through the chakras until it meets with the Shiva. Shakti and Shiva unite in the crown chakra in a trance of ecstasy or samadhi, in which the ego is annihilated and duality ends. That is very similar to what the Maoris said about Rangi and Papa, where Rangi comes down from above and Papa comes up from below. In the Inca system, we mentioned the overworld and the underworld coming together. In the Chinese system, it would be heaven chi and earth chi meeting. In the Christian system, it's Christ descending and the bride of Christ ascending to meet him. Yang and yin. It's all the same thing, a kind of ecstatic union of known as a spiritual wedding. In alchemy, we also have a ladder in the form of a 7-step pyramid. You've got calcination, sublimation, solution, putrefaction, distillation, coagulation, and tincture. The result at the end of this process is the phoenix, which is the bird that's reborn from its own ashes. It's rebirth again. And here you have the coffin with a little fairy dancing on the top, showing that the conquering of death. And again here, the magnum opus completed is at the top level of the pyramid. In Freemasonry, there are 33 steps, 33 degrees in the initiation system. Those 33 degrees relate to the 33 vertebrae in the human spine, again showing an ascent up the spine as you go up the levels and the grades. In the Egyptian system, there was this Jed column, which represented not only the tree in which Osiris was encased, but it represented the spine of Osiris and also the polar axis. There's even in this Jed raising ceremony which they held in Egypt, there's a depiction of that in which the Jed is at exactly 23.5 degrees, which is the angle of the Earth's tilt away from the vertical. Notice the similarity between that and the Mayan concept of the pole, the Earth's pole, which also has cross beams and feathers on top of it. The spine itself has the quality of the ladder we just mentioned, but it also has a serpentine quality to it when you look at it from the side, and it connects the sacrum, which means holy bone, to the temples in the skull. So you have the 33-step serpentine ladder connecting the holy bone and the temples, and the Maya seem to have seen the sacrum as a kind of second skull, and here's there's actually an extinct animal now which they carved the pelvis into a skull shape to emphasize this concept. But also noticeable is the fact that this pelvis, this sacrum here, looks like a turtle. And there's a Maya creation myth of one Hunahpu being born from the back of a turtle. That area of the sky is where Orion is. That corresponds to what the Greeks call the Silver Gate. It's like the galactic anti-center, if you like, which is opposite the galactic center. The galactic center is in the area of the sky the Greeks knew as the Golden Gate, and they said that the Golden Gate was the gate of reincarnation. No, the Silver Gate was the gate of reincarnation, and the Golden Gate was the gate of ascension and the descent of the gods. So this is all rather suggestive because here this is where galactic alignment will occur, and this suggests a kind of, due to the spinal picture with the turtle at one end and the temples at the other, suggests a sort of galactic Kundalini movement. And actually, John Major Jenkins did actually suggest something similar in his book Galactic Alignment, and this is a picture, again, thanks very much, John. And this one here is by Darlene, Vincent Bridges' partner. And you can see that it implies there may be some kind of galactic chakras. This is a formation that occurred this year. We've already seen it, but look how similar it is to this diagram here, where you have it can be seen as the caduceus, but it's also the Ida and the Pingala, which are in the Hindu system. You have the Sushumna as the central column down the spine, up which the Kundalini rises, and there's a sort of intertwining passages either side of it, and also reminiscent of the caduceus, but is pointing at the pale horse, the white horse on the hill there, reminiscent of the pale horse of death from the book of Revelation. And as somebody mentioned, just over here is Francine, I think, yeah, is Adam's grave, just off the map here. So you've got the pale horse of death, Adam's grave, and the caduceus pointing to it, but that doesn't necessarily mean death as in bad news, because it could be the death of the species, the end of the species, and the start of a new species, the end of Homo sapiens, and the start of a new species of Homo superior, Homo perfectus, whatever. whatever you want to call it, but another step up the ladder, another level of the game. This is a diagram picture that I did to incorporate some of the themes I've been talking about and some more which are spoken of in the book. This, of course, we see as the labyrinth represented not only by the Cretans but as the emergent symbol of the Hopi Indians, representing the transition between the fourth world and the fifth world. And here you have the Minotaur representing the death of the ego. And there are several, this is Terence McKenna's time wave here. There's several other things which are mentioned in the book which I haven't mentioned. And here's another one. That's all right. Again, you can see the 7 levels and the opening of reality, so the dissolving of the veil. And these are all things that come together from studying all these different angles, which I hope you've appreciated. This is Alex Gray's take on it. New man and new woman, where the pineal eye is opened and we can see beyond the third dimension. And that's where you can find out more about it. There's a box at the back if you want to, I scattered some forms around. If the original plan was to have the book out and ready for this event, but it didn't come off, unfortunately. So there's a few of these forms scattered around. Anybody who wants me to let them know how much it is and when it's published, just put your info on the form, and there's a little box on the book table at the back there. If you'd like to stick it in the box, I'll let you know, preferably by email. But I can send letters or telephone.
Do you have a website?
Yes, it's www.diagnosis2012.co.uk. So it'll be announced on there as soon as it's out as well. Thank you very much.